2 Chronicles chapter 29. Hezekiah became king when he was 25 years old and was king in Jerusalem for 29 years. His mother was Abijah, daughter of Zechariah. In God's opinion, he was a good king. He kept to the standards of his ancestor David. In the first month of his first year of his reign, Hezekiah, having first repaired the doors of the temple of God, threw them open to the public. He assembled the priests and Levites in the court on the east side and said, "Levites, listen, consecrate yourselves and consecrate the temple of God. Give this much defiled place a good housecleaning." Our ancestors went wrong and lived badly before God. They discarded him, turned away from this house where we meet with God, and walked off. They boarded up the doors, turned out the lights, and cancelled all the acts of worship of the God of Israel in the Holy Temple. And because of that, God's anger flared up and turned these people into a public exhibit of disaster. A moral history lesson. Look and read. This is why our ancestors were killed, and this is why our wives and sons and daughters were taken prisoner and made slaves. I have decided to make a covenant with God, with the God of Israel, and turn history around so that God will no longer be angry with us. Children, don't drag your feet in this. God has chosen you to take your place before him to serve in conducting and leading worship. This is your life work. Make sure you do it and do it well. The Levites stood at attention. Mahath, son of Amasai, and Joel, son of Azariah, from the Kohathites, Kish, son of Abdi and Azariah, son of Jehallelel, from the Merarites, Joah, son of Zimmah and Eden, son of Joah, from the Gershonites, Shimri and Jeiel, sons of Elizaphan, Zechariah and Mattaniah, sons of Asaph, Jehiel and Shimei of the family of Heman, Shemaiah and Uzziel of the family of Jeduthun. They presented themselves and their brothers, consecrated themselves, and set to work cleaning up the temple of God as the king had directed, as God directed. The priests started from the inside and worked out. They emptied the palace of the accumulations of defiling junk, pagan rubbish that had no business in that holy place, and the Levites hauled it off to the Kidron Valley. They began the temple cleaning of the first day of the first month, and by the 8th day they had worked their way out to the porch. 8 days it took them to clean and consecrate the temple itself, and in 8 more days they had finished with the entire temple complex. Then they reported to Hezekiah the king, "We have cleaned up the entire temple of God, including the altar of whole burnt offering and the table of the bread of the presence with their furnishings. We have also cleaned up and consecrated all the vessels which King Ahaz had gotten rid of during his misrule. Take a look, we have repaired them. They're all there in front of the altar of God." Then Hezekiah the king went to work. He got all the leaders of the city together and marched to the temple of God. They brought with them 7 bulls, 7 rams, 7 lambs, and 7 he-goats to sacrifice as an absolution offering for the royal family, for the sanctuary, and for Judah as a whole. He directed the Aaronites priests to sacrifice them on the altar of God. The priests butchered the bulls and then took the blood and sprinkled it on the altar, and then the same with the rams and the lambs. Finally they brought the goats up. The king and congregation laid their hands upon them. The priests butchered them and made an absolution offering with their blood at the altar to atone for the sin of all Israel. The king had ordered that the whole burnt offerings and the absolution offerings be for all Israel. The king ordered the Levites to take their places in the temple of God with their musical instruments, cymbals, harps, zithers, following the original instructions of David, Gad the king's seer, and Nathan the prophet. This was God's command, conveyed by his prophets. The Levites formed the orchestra of David, while the priests took up the trumpets. Then Hezekiah gave the signal to begin. The whole burnt offering was offered on the altar. At the same time, the sacred choir began singing, backed up by the trumpets and the David orchestra, while the entire congregation worshipped. The singers sang and the trumpeters played all during the sacrifice of the whole burnt offering. When the offering of the sacrifice was complete, the king and everyone there knelt to the ground and worshipped. Then Hezekiah, the king and the leaders, took the Levites to finish things off with anthems of praise to God using lyrics by David and the Asaph the seer. They sang their praises with joy and reverence, kneeling in worship. Hezekiah then made this response: "The dedication is complete. You're consecrated to God. Now you're ready. Come forward and bring your sacrifices and thank offerings to the temple of God." And come they did. Everyone in the congregation brought sacrifices and thank offerings, and some, overflowing with generosity, even brought whole burnt offerings, a generosity expressed in 70 bulls, 100 rams, and 200 lambs, all for whole burnt offerings for God. The total number of animals consecrated for sacrifice that day amounted to 600 bulls and 3,000 sheep. They ran out of priests qualified to slaughter all the whole burnt offerings, so their brother Levites stepped in and helped out while other priests consecrated themselves for the work. It turned out that the Levites had been more responsible in making sure that they were properly consecrated than the priest had been. Besides the overflow of whole burnt offerings, there were also choice pieces of the peace offerings and lavish liberations that went with the whole burnt offerings. The worship in the temple of God was on a firm footing again. Hezekiah and the congregation celebrated. God had established a firm foundation for the lives of the people, and so quickly.